I was never meant to uncover this, and you were never supposed to hear it. In fact, right now there are people who would prefer this message disappears before you even finish it, yet somehow you're here, and that means one thing. You're not like the others. Something inside you already knows that the way you were taught to think was a lie, that something was missing, that the rules they gave you were never designed to make you powerful. What I'm about to show you was AAS from education, buried under layers of distraction and locked away for a select few. But today that's changes. Stay with me, because in the next few minutes I'm going to expose the exact brain hack that was stolen from you, and why knowing it could change everything. Why schools never taught you this. Think back to your time in school. You were never trained to think, you were trained to obey. They told you to memorize, not question, follow instructions, not innovate, fit in, not stand out. But have you ever wondered why it wasn't by accident? The modern education system wasn't built to make you powerful. It was designed during the Industrial Revolution for one purpose: to create obedient workers, the kind of people who don't think for themselves, who follow orders, who never challenge the system that controls them. But here's what they don't want you to know: there was a time when schools actually trained students to think at genius levels. They taught methods that made problem-solving effortless, that unlocked memory and creativity in ways that seem almost superhuman by today's standards. And then it all disappeared, erased from curriculums, replaced with rigid structures that killed innovation and suppressed higher-level thinking. The question is why? Because a population that thinks like this is dangerous. People who use this technique don't wait for permission. They don't accept limits. They create, dominate, and outthink their competition effortlessly. And that kind of mind, it's uncontrollable. That's why this method was hidden from you until now, the erased mind hack. But here's the part they don't want you to know: before this system took over, education wasn't like this. Students were trained in classical methods of thinking, techniques that sharpened memory, enhanced creativity, and allowed them to make lightning-fast connections between ideas. One of the most powerful of these methods was mental webbing, a cognitive technique that forced the brain to think in networks rather than straight lines, the same way the minds of polymaths, strategic geniuses, and world-changing inventors operate. Mental webbing wasn't just another learning tool, it was a framework for elite thinking, a method that allowed students to absorb information faster, link ideas that others couldn't see, and generate solutions that felt almost superhuman. And that's exactly why it was removed. The forbidden brain hack, mental webbing. Now that you understand why this was hidden from you, let me show you what they didn't want you to know. This technique, known as mental webbing, was once a core part of elite education. It was how the most powerful minds in history, Da Vinci, Tesla, Einstein, were able to connect ideas at a speed most people can't comprehend. But what exactly is it, and how does it work? How mental webbing creates genius thinking. Most people are taught to think in straight lines. A problem is presented, a solution is given, and you move on. But this is not how true intelligence works. Genius level thinking happens when the brain is able to see connections between seemingly unrelated ideas. The more connections, the more powerful your thinking becomes. Mental webbing forces your brain to do exactly that. It turns isolated knowledge into a networked intelligence system, making it nearly impossible for you to forget what you've learned and allowing you to generate new ideas faster than anyone else. Here's how it works. Step 1. Input expansion. How to force your brain to think like a genius. Your brain is a machine, but right now it's running on outdated software, one that was designed to make you think small. The system trained you to focus on one thing at a time, study one subject at a time, and Master only what's necessary, but what if? I told you that the greatest minds in history, Da Vinci, Tesla, Musk, Einstein, did the exact opposite. Geniuses don't specialize, they expand, they flood their brains with knowledge from completely unrelated fields, forcing their minds to connect ideas that no one else can see. And when that happens, that's when breakthroughs occur. That's when your brain stops following predictable paths and starts making connections so powerful that you'll begin seeing solutions before others even recognize the problem. Why the elite used this and why you weren't taught it, let me ask you something. Who benefits from keeping you thinking in straight lines? If everyone thought like Tesla, if everyone connected ideas like Da Vinci, if everyone saw hidden patterns before they were obvious, how would the world look? It would be impossible to control industries, would collapse, governments wouldn't be able to predict behavior. The system relies on you thinking predictably, but the elite, they don't think in straight lines, they think in webs. This is why billionaires fund multidisciplinary education for their children, why military strategists study philosophy, and why high-level investors learn neuroscience, because once your brain sees everything as connected, you stop playing the game. You start writing the rules, how to expand your inputs and supercharge your thinking. One, start consuming 3 fields of knowledge at the same time. Example: psychology plus business plus military strategy if you're studying marketing. Read about ancient warfare if you're learning persuasion. Study magicians and illusionists if you're interested in leadership. Analyze the minds of world conquerors to cross-pollinate your knowledge. After consuming different ideas, force your brain to find connections. Ask yourself, how does this concept from war strategy applied to negotiation? What can I learn about human behavior from studying game theory? How does psychology influence global finance? 3, look for patterns others can't see. Every week, write down 5 unusual connections between topics that seem unrelated. Example: what do chess grandmasters and high-level CEOs have in common? The more you do this, the more you'll start predicting trends and seeing opportunities before they happen. What happens when you do this at first? It will feel overwhelming. Your brain isn't used to thinking this way. You'll feel like nothing makes sense, but then something strange will happen. Suddenly, you'll start seeing hidden connections everywhere. Your mind will jump between ideas effortlessly. You'll solve problems faster, recall information instantly, and generate ideas that others can't even comprehend. This is how visionaries like Elon Musk and Steve Jobs operated, by blending knowledge from fields that no one else thought to connect. And that's exactly why this method was erased from schools, because when you think this way, you become unpredictable, uncontrollable, a force that no one can manipulate. Most people will never do this. They'll keep thinking the way they were trained to think: small, limited, predictable. But those who apply this, their minds will never work the same way again. Before we move ahead, let me introduce the Whisper Handbook, your playbook to psychological dominance. You'll learn how to win without fighting, control without commanding, influence without being noticed, program thoughts into someone's mind without them realizing it, make people chase you, frame every situation in your favor, stay 2 steps ahead. There is much more in this book. You won't just learn these techniques, you will become the master of them. This book will train you to outthink, outmaneuver, and outplay anyone who stands in your way. And because you're here, I've got an exclusive discount just for you. Use the code DARKFRIEND and unlock the power of true influence. Read it now before someone else uses it against you. Step 2: Association mapping, the hidden technique that makes forgetting impossible. Imagine if you could hear a concept once and never forget it. What if every idea you learned instantly became part of your mental arsenal, ready to be retrieved at any moment effortlessly. The elite have a secret technique for this. It's called association mapping, a method so powerful that once you learn it, your brain will start storing and recalling information at speeds most people will never experience, and here's why it works. The human brain doesn't store information in straight lines. It doesn't remember isolated facts. It remembers connections, and the strong those connections, the harder it is to forget. This is why students cram for tests and forget everything a week later, while self-made billionaires, grandmasters, and high-level strategists recall information instantly because they train their minds to store knowledge in interconnected webs, not in random pieces. How association mapping rewires your brain. 4. Total recall. The school system forced you to memorize things in isolation: dates, formulas, facts. No wonder it never worked. But what if I told you that memory isn't about repetition, it's about connection? When you force your brain to link new knowledge to something you already know, it embeds that information deep into your subconscious, making it nearly impossible to forget. How to apply it. The elite memory method. 1. Link every new idea to 3 old ones. Anytime you learn something new, ask, where have I seen this before? How does this connect to something I already understand? What field outside of this topic has a similar principle? Example: if you're studying persuasion tactics, ICS, link them to chess strategy thinking, multiple moves ahead, military deception tactics, winning without fighting, psychological biases, how emotions override logic. The more links you create, the stronger the memory becomes. 2. Use memory hooks to make ideas unforgettable. Your brain remembers stories and images better than facts. Turn new knowledge into something visual, bizarre, or emotional. Example: instead of memorizing supply and demand, picture a rich man fighting over the last glass of water in the desert. Your mind will never forget something that feels real. This is how memory champions recall thousands of pieces of information effortlessly. Because they don't memorize, they associate. 3. The teach it back rule. Lock it into your brain forever. The fastest way to master an idea: teach it within 24 hours. If you can't explain it simply, you don't truly understand it. Bonus: teaching forces your brain to organize knowledge in a way that makes retrieval automatic. If you learn something and don't force your brain to connect it, you'll forget it. But if you use this process, your memory will become bulletproof. What happens when you do this? Within days, you'll start noticing something strange. Your brain will begin retrieving ideas faster than ever before. Conversations will flow effortlessly. Problem solving will feel automatic. You'll recall information in ways that will shock even yourself, and the more you do it, the more powerful this effect becomes. Your brain will start treating every new idea as part of a larger web of intelligence instead of a random fact floating in isolation. This is why billionaires can hold entire industries in their minds, why world-class debaters can recall information on demand, and why high-level strategists can process massive amounts of data without hesitation. They don't memorize, they associate. And now, so will you. Most people will never do this. They'll keep cramming, keep forgetting, and keep wondering why they never improve. But those who apply this, their brains will become untouchable. Step 3. Outcome multiplication. Thinking in multiple dimensions. Most people solve problems the way they were trained, to find one right answer and move on. That's why they stay stuck. But the elite, the top strategists, billionaires, and world leaders, they never think in straight lines. They think in dimensions. This is the final step, the one that separates the predictable from the powerful. Because the moment you train your brain to generate multiple high-level solutions instead of just one, you stop competing and start dominating. Why? You've been trained to think small in school. They told you to find one answer, the right answer. They gave you formulas, multiple choice questions, and a rigid way of thinking that made your brain weak. But the reality is, in the real world there is never just one answer. The most powerful minds never ask what's the solution, they ask what are all the possible solutions. This is what allows the elite to make moves no one sees coming, to outmaneuver, outthink, and stay 10 steps ahead. And today you're going to train your mind to do the same. How to apply it? The elite multi-thinking method. 1. Break free from first answer thinking. The next time you face a problem, do not accept the first answer that comes to mind. Force yourself to generate at least 5 possible solutions, even if the first idea is correct. Ask, what's another way? What would the opposite approach look like? What would a criminal, a scientist, and an artist do differently? Your brain has been conditioned to stop thinking the moment you find an answer, but once you train it to keep pushing, you'll start generating ideas that most people will never even consider. To reverse engineer the unseen path instead of thinking forward, start thinking backward. Example: if your goal is to become a millionaire, don't ask, how do I make $1 million? Instead ask, if I already had $1 million, what steps would I have taken to get here? This rewires your brain to think from a position of success rather than struggle, forcing it to see solutions from a perspective most people will never access. 3. The 10 moves ahead strategy. Every time you make a decision, think about its second and third order effects. Ask yourself, what happens if this works? What happens if it fails? What happens if I do nothing? Map out how each decision affects everything else. This is how the elite stay ahead, while others react. Most people only think about what's in front of them, but those who think in dimensions, they see the entire game before anyone else even knows they're playing. What happens when you master this? When you train your brain to think in multiple dimensions, you stop seeing problems, you see opportunities. You'll start noticing something strange while others are stuck overthinking, hesitating, or making predictable moves. You'll already be 3 steps ahead. This is why the most powerful people in the world never seem rushed, never seem stressed, and always seem in control, because while everyone else is playing checkers, they're playing chess at a level most people can't even comprehend. And now, so will you. 99% of people will never do this. They'll stay stuck thinking in straight lines, in one right answer thinking. But the ones who apply this, they'll see what no one else sees, and that is the key to true power. Why this works and why it was hidden. This method wasn't just us from education by accident. It was stripped out because people who think this way don't need a system to tell them what to do. They build instead of follow. They question instead of obey. They create solutions before others even see problems. And that is exactly why this technique was removed, to make sure only a select few would ever be able to think this way. But now that power is in your hands, and the only question left is, what will you do with it? How to train mental webbing and turn your brain into a supercomputer. Now that you understand how mental webbing works, let's go deeper, because knowing about it isn't enough. If you don't train your brain to think this way, it will stay stuck in the same outdated patterns that were forced onto you in school. But if you follow what I'm about to show you, you'll start experiencing something strange. Your thoughts will become faster, your problem solving will become effortless, and you'll begin outthinking people before they even realize it. The 7-day mental webbing challenge. For the next 7 days, you're going to reprogram your brain to think like the elite. Each day builds on the last, so don't skip a step. Day 1 to expand your inputs, force new connections in your brain. Read, watch, or listen to something completely outside your field. Example: if you study business, read about ancient warfare. If you're in Tech study psychology. Write down 5 unexpected connections between what you learned and your main area of focus. This forces your brain to break out of old thinking patterns and see knowledge as a web, not isolated facts. Day 3 to 4. Association training. Never forget what you learn. Every time you learn something new, connect it to 3 things you already know. Example, if you learn a new sales technique, link it to a chess strategy, a military tactic, a negotiation trick from history. Speak these connections out loud or write them down. The more connections your brain makes, the easier it becomes to recall information instantly. Day 5 to 6. Multiply your solutions. Think in dimensions, not lines. Every time you face a problem, generate at least 5 different solutions, even if your first answer is obvious. Force yourself to come up with crazier ideas if stuck. Ask, what would a scientist do? What would a criminal do? What would an artist do? This trains your brain to stop thinking in straight lines and start seeing multiple paths at once. The way billionaires, intelligence agencies, and top strategists operate. Day 7. Think like a spy exercise. Sharpen your perception. Go to a public place and observe people. Write down your assumptions about them, their job there, emotions, their personality. Then find a way to confirm if you were right. This builds pattern recognition, one of the most powerful cognitive skills on the planet. Once mastered, you'll be able to read people, situations, and trends before anyone else does. What happens after 7 days? By the end of this challenge, your brain will start working differently. You'll notice patterns, faster recall information instantly, and solve problems in ways most people can't even comprehend. This isn't theory. This is exactly how the minds of the most powerful people in history were trained. And now you have that same knowledge. At this point, you have 2 choices. You can walk away and forget everything you just heard. You can go back to thinking the way they trained you to think, linear, predictable, controllable. You can stay inside the system they built for you, following the same outdated rules, never questioning, never rising above. Or you can take control. You now hold the same mental framework that was once used to shape the greatest minds in history, the same method that was removed from your education, kept hit by the elite, and designed to be out of your reach. But now it's in your hands. The question is, what will you do with it? If you're ready to rewire your brain, start the 7-day mental webbing challenge right now. If you want more hidden knowledge like this, make sure you're subscribed, because what I just gave you is only the beginning. And if you're serious about escaping mental slavery, drop a comment below and tell me, what's the first step you're taking today to break free from the system? The ones who act on this knowledge will never think the same way again. The ones who hesitate, they'll stay exactly where they are. The elite have been using this for centuries. Now it's your move.